Thank you for the sweet time of worship we've enjoyed. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25, and we'll begin reading today in verse 27. Genesis 25, 27. We started the study on the life of Jacob, called from a rascal to a righteous man, because that's the story of Jacob, and it's also a story of many of our lives. Jacob was a rascal. Whenever he came here, there's no doubt about it. As we look at his life, you will see he was a rascal, but God pursued him. And as God continuously pursued him and worked on him, he reaches a place where he surrenders his life to God. He puts his faith in God, and he becomes a righteous man. His name is changed from Jacob to Israel. He has 12 sons who become the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's the birthing of that glorious nation Israel that we've seen has a part of history, and that all of history in God's mind surrounds what happens to that people and that place, Israel. Well, and beginning in verse 27, you find that time has rapidly passed. Isn't it amazing how the Bible goes from they were born till they're grown? You know, sometimes I'd like to have a few more words in there. I'd like to have a few more stories, a few more illustrations of what happened. But basically, the boys grow up. And as they grow up, you find about their situation with their family, their parents, and you find the first experience or a significant experience that happens in their life. Look what it says in Genesis 25, 27 and following. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a peaceful man, living in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And when Jacob had cooked stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please let me have a swallow of that red stuff there, for I am famished." Therefore his name was called Edom, which means red. But Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am about to die. So what use then is the birthright to me?" And Jacob said, "First swear to me." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. I hope you leave your Bibles open as we look at this passage dealing with the growing up years and the relationship they have with their family, and some very interesting characteristic traits that each one of these boys possess, and especially as we focus in on the life of Jacob. You find out there in verse 27 and following that the boys have grown up, and Esau becomes a skillful hunter. In other words, he was an outdoorsman. He liked being out there in the wild. He liked hunting for wild game. He liked to be the one who holds captive and kills and brings that game in and provides it for his family. He's that outdoorsman, or what somebody would call that man's man, Grizzly Adams type of a fella. But you find out that Jacob was distinctly different. It says he was a peaceful man. Not only was he a peaceful man, he liked living in tents. In other words, he liked staying at the house. He enjoyed being at home. He enjoyed probably spending time with his mother. He liked doing some of the things that happens inside the tent. He was not for that outdoor stuff. He wasn't for that hunting type of thing. He wasn't for being Grizzly Adams. Not in any way. He kind of liked having peace, being at home, and the nice things of life. Two distinctly different personalities. Now, isn't it interesting how our kids have distinctly different personalities? They can even be twins, as these are twins, and have distinctly different personalities. Esau over here, the hunter and the woodsman, and Jacob, who likes to stay in the tent and to be around the more domesticated things of life. We find out something else beginning in verse 28, though. You find out that the parents actually have favorite sons. Now, you need to make a note in your Bible right there, in your notes, that the Bible doesn't always present things the way they ought to be. It just presents the truth of how it was. You understand? In other words, the Bible will tell the good things of people, and it'll tell some of those things they'd rather not have it written about. It tells both the glamour and the warts. It tells those things about all the characters in the Bible. But just because it's in the Bible does not mean it's supposed to be an example that we follow. And this is certainly not an example we follow. Because you find out that those two boys are loved by different parents. It actually says that. It says that Isaac loved Esau. His favorite son was Esau. And here's a very good reason for it, because he liked the taste of game. Boy, isn't that a reason to like one better than another one? Because you like the taste of the meat, because it appeals to your palate, because there's something about him that you like. He was his favored son. Not only his favorite son, he says he's the one that he loved. But look on, it says, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, I don't know why she loved Jacob. Maybe it's because he liked being around her. Maybe he liked being in the tent. Maybe he liked spending time with doing what she did. Maybe he was interested. Or it could be the fact that she always remembers that prophecy that was foretold to her by the angel of God about her two boys. You remember that? We saw that last week. That Esau was going to be the oldest, but that Jacob was going to be the stronger, and that Esau would eventually serve Jacob. And Jacob would be the one who would be the best or the highest. And she got that from the Word of God. God speaking to her heart, speaking to her life. So maybe because of that prophecy, maybe because of that promise, maybe her heart tended towards Jacob, that she loved him, she cared for him, and basically he was her favorite. Now, the reason I say the Bible presents things that are not patterns to follow, that's not the way it ought to be. One parent shouldn't love another child more than he or she loves all the children. We should love each other equally. I hope that you do that with your children. We work mighty hard to make sure that what we do for one, we do for both, or we do for all, or however it would happen. We just try to make sure that they know we love all of them the same, that we take care of them all the same, that not one of them do we love any more than the other, and there is no favorite. That would be the desire or the goal that we would have. But in their case, Isaac loved Esau, and Rebekah loved Jacob. And I guess it was the fact that the boys knew that. The boys understood that. Because as the story continues in and through their lives, you find that Rebekah is always favoring Jacob and Isaac is always favoring Esau. Well, that's the situation of the family that they grew up in. And that's kind of where they started in their lives. Then there comes a very significant event. It's recorded in the Word of God. A significant event that's going to be in their lives, but not only their lives, it's a significant event for all of Israel, and it's also a significant event for us and all of mankind. It comes down to a day when Esau had gone out hunting. He goes out and he goes hunting. Well, when he comes back, he must not have anything because he don't have anything to eat. I know a lot of hunters who do that. Do any of you women know your husband hunters who go out and hunt all day and come back with nothing? Well, that's exactly what he had. He'd gone out, he had hunted. And no telling how long he'd been out hunting. But he comes back obviously empty-handed because he has nothing to eat. While he comes in and when he comes in, Jacob has made a stew. It's called lentil stew. Lentil is a bush that has little red berries on it. And those red berries are very tasty, even used to this day over there to make stew or soup. And those little red berries would make the soup or the stew look red. And he had made this lentil red stew, and he had it cooking whenever Esau comes into the tent. When he comes into the tent, it says he's famished, he's weary, he's hungry. He wants something to eat. And whenever he wants something to eat, he looks over at Jacob, and he says to Jacob, he says, give me some of that red stuff. Now, that's important. You need to remember that. Give me some of that red stuff. And he says, Jacob says, well, I'll give you some of that red stuff, but before I give you that red stuff, you got to sell me your birthright. You got to sell me your birthright. I know Esau, who's weary and famished, and as we'll talk about his personality a little bit, he says, man, I'm about to die. If I'm about to die, what good is a birthright for me? What good is it to me? Sure, you can have my birthright. Just give me some of that stew. Give me some of that red stuff. And Jacob said, well, you swear to me that you'll give me the birthright. And he swore to him in the presence of God. He sold him that birthright. And Jacob gave him some bread and some of that lentil stew. And Esau sat down and he ate that stew and that red stuff. And then it says he gets up and he goes on his way. The little footnote right there, it says, and Esau despised his birthright. He despised his birthright. Well, that story tells us a number of things about those guys. How they are so different and what qualities in their life and what changes God is going to have to make in their lives. Let's talk about them for just a minute. First of all, let's talk about Esau. Esau's personality was that he walked around probably most of the time pretty reckless and unprepared. Pretty reckless and unprepared. I mean, he was that wild gamesman. He went out there, he did the hunting, he would bring it back and eat if he had it, but on occasions he was unprepared because when he comes in this time, he has no wild game, he has nothing to eat, and he's absolutely famished, it says, weary and hungry. His personality was such that he would be reckless and unprepared, which is going to set him up to make some very important decisions seem very insignificant. You know what I mean by that? Because he wasn't prepared, because he was reckless in his makeup, he was going to be in a situation to where he was going to make decisions that seemed as though it didn't mean a thing to him, where they are life-changing, eternal decisions. Look what it says there in verse 29 and following. And when Jacob had cooked that stew, Esau came into the field, and he was famished. And he said to Esau said to Jacob, please let me have a swallow. He just wants a swallow of that red stuff. Now, what he says in regard to that is, I want the red stuff. The reason I had you to circle that or underline it is it goes on and it says his name is Edom. Remember, his name is Edom. He's the father of the Edomites. You know what the word Edom means? It means red. It means red. From that day on, he was known as Edom. All of his lineage is known as the Edomites. And from that day on, he's going to remember that he sold his birthright for some red stuff. For some red stuff. Every time his name is spoken, Edom, it reminds him of red and that red stuff. That red stuff that seems so important to him. He was reckless, and not only reckless, he was usually unprepared, which caused him to make compulsive decisions. Have any of you ever had a tendency to make compulsive decisions? In other words, you don't think very much about it. It just seems like it's the right thing to do at the time. Seems like a good idea at the time. Well, because of his recklessness and because he's unprepared, he had a tendency to make those compulsive decisions. Not only here, but throughout his life, he makes those compulsive decisions. Never thinks about it, never lets it run around his brain twice. He just says, I need something. Well, whenever Jacob said, if you need that red stuff, then what I need for you to do is to sell me your birthright. In that compulsion, the only thing he's thinking about is he's got a hungry stomach and he's going to die if he doesn't eat. And in that compulsive decision, he says, sure, you can have it. Just give me the red stuff. Put a little footnote right there. If you have a tendency to be compulsive, if you have a tendency to make those compulsive decisions, put a star by that. Many times you're going to make the wrong decision. If you let the situations of life and the circumstances they just seem that are there, you're usually going to make the wrong decision. In his compulsive decision making, you find out that something about him. He has a real lack of concern about spiritual things and spiritual life. Do you know what the birthright was? The birthright was the privilege given to the firstborn, and Esau was the firstborn. The birthright was that privilege he had to be identified as the one who would eventually be the patriarch of the family. He would eventually be the leader of that family. Not only was he the recipient of the birthright, but the one who received the birthright also was entitled to the blessing. And that was the blessing of the father upon that particular son. And that blessing meant a number of things. Not only was the blessing, recognized blessing of God, and he was a patriarch, he also had the opportunity of receiving twice what any other son, as far as the material possessions in that inheritance. He received twice as much. He became the priest over that home. He was the authority over that family. All of those things were given to him because he had the birthright. But here's Esau, who's reckless, unprepared, and make compulsive decision. When Jacob says to him, listen, I want you to sell me the birthright, he should have said, there's no way in the world you'll get that birthright. I wouldn't sell it for anything. That's my privilege. That's a spiritual blessing. That's what I've been entitled. There's no way you could get it. But that's not what he said. Not at all. Matter of fact, you know, another situation in life, he had a tendency to exaggerate. Have you ever met anybody who has a tendency to exaggerate? Look what he says right here. When Jacob says, first sell me the birthright, look at verse 32. Behold, I'm about to die. Behold, I'm about to die. So what good is a birthright for me? Stop here just a minute. Think just a sec. How many of you think that if he didn't eat that stew, he was going to die? He wasn't going to die. Now, I've been that hungry before I thought I was going to die if I didn't get something to eat. But none of us would die because we missed a meal. I hope that's been proven to you during our time of fasting for revival. If you fasted, you missed a meal, and you are still here to talk about it. He was exhausted, he was weary, he was hungry, but he had a tendency to exaggerate and said, I'm about to die. What good is the birthright to me? In that exaggeration, in that compulsive decision, in that lack of preparedness, he shows that he has no value, considers no value regarding that spiritual privilege of birthright. Well, there's another thing about him. He passes up the birthright. He walks as though and leaves it as though it's nothing. To despise means it means nothing to you. To despise means it has no importance in your life. He despised the birthright, but hold on a second. In a few more chapters, you're going to find out that he wants the blessing. He desires the blessing. Oh, he wants his dad to bless him, and he wants to have that double portion. He wants all those things that you should get by the blessing. He's forsaken the birthright. He sold the birthright, and when he sold the birthright, he forsook the blessing. It could not be his, but he wants the blessing without the birthright. But he cannot have it. Matter of fact, if you read in your Bibles in Hebrews chapter 12, the very last two verses of Hebrews 12, it gives a commentary about Esau's life. It says, be no immoral man like the man Esau, who sold his birthright for some stew, a bowl of stew. But later, when he desires the blessing, he cannot receive it, though he repents and seeks for it in tears. See, when he forsook the opportunity and sold the birthright, he lost the opportunity of having the blessing. And he's going to regret that. He's going to cry over that. He's going to weep over that. But because of his failure to understand spiritual things, he sells the birthright and he loses the blessing. That's Esau. What about Jacob? Well, Jacob's just on the other end of the spectrum. You couldn't be any different than Esau and Jacob are to each other. I mean, where Esau is unprepared and he's reckless, there's nothing reckless about Jacob at all. He is cunning and calculating. He's obviously heard from his mother about that prophecy. He knows all about the birthright, and he knows about the blessing, and he knows what the angel had said to her regarding him before he's ever born. I'm sure Rebekah had told him time again that you're the youngest, but you're going to be the one that has the birthright and the blessing. You're the youngest, but Esau is going to serve you. You're the youngest, but God has a plan for you. He knew all about the birthright and the blessing. And what his plan was, he was so calculating and cunning, he was looking for an opening and an opportunity where he could get that from Esau, his brother. He was, remember, Jacob. He's the one who sneaks behind you and grabs your heel. He's the one who trips you up along the way. He's calculating, cunning, and looking for that time. He also is very discerning about his brother's tendencies and his brother's weaknesses. Oh, you better believe that Jacob knew how he would be whenever he was unprepared. He knew how he would just jump out there and make decisions. He'd been spending enough time with Esau. He knew that Esau didn't really know the value of that birthright that was his by birth. He knew that he would make decisions that he shouldn't make. He knew that he'd exaggerate, think he's going to die. He was calculating and cunning in all of that, and he knew his brother well, so that when the opportunity came, he would have the opportunity to move in and to be able to get that birthright. And this was the day. He's famished, he's hungry. Jacob has something that he wants, but Esau has something that Jacob wants. And he says, before I will give you the stew, you got to give me, sell to me the birthright. Knowing his brother, he knows he's got him trapped. He knows he's got him exactly where he wants him to be. His brother will put value on the stew more than the birthright because he knows the tendencies of his brother. Now understand, he did not steal that birthright. You hear me? Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Jacob stole his birthright. He purchased that birthright. He purchased it. And that was legal. They could actually do that. Here's the problem. He purchased it with a bowl of stew. That was all that Esau considered that birthright. Just a bowl of soup. But Jacob knew he had him. And what did Esau do? Esau says, man, I'm about to die. Give me the stew. Give me that stew, and I will give you my birthright. He said, you got to swear to me. He swore before God, I will give you the birthright. And he was able to get the birthright. It was his birthright. And it also means he's now going to be the recipient of the blessing. Before God, he's going to be the recipient of the blessing. Cunning, calculating, knowing the tendencies of that one that he wants, working out a deal that he knows is getting far more than a bowl of stew. All those things are the heart of Jacob. One thing you have to say about him, though, that's far better than Esau, he did understand the value of the birthright and the blessing. See, Esau didn't know it, but Jacob understood the value of it. Now, it may not have been the spiritual side of that because Jacob's not thinking spiritually right now. But he knows something. Listen, when you got the birthright and the blessing, you get double the inheritance. And you get the chance to be the patriarch, and you get the opportunity to be the priest and the authority. I want those possessions. I want that position. I want that power. I want that birthright and that blessing. He at least understood the value of it, even though it wasn't from a spiritual perspective. He did understand that. Far better than Esau, who despised it and thought of no value, either of those things. What was Jacob's problem? Here's Jacob's problem. He's cunning, he's calculating, he knows the tendency of his brother, and he eventually gets him to sell him the birthright. But here's the problem. God had already told Jacob he was going to have that position. But here's the problem. Jacob does not trust in God to work that out. Jacob has to figure out his own way to get it. That's his problem. See, he didn't have to be cunning and deceiving and calculating. God would have given that to him anyway. He just needed to trust in God. He needed to wait for God to do what God was going to do. God was going to do it anyway, but he couldn't wait. He had to take it in his own hands, do it his own way, so he could achieve what he was wanting, so he could get in his hands what he was wanting. He didn't have to. He just couldn't wait for God. Sometimes we may have those tendencies. God has said it. God's promised. But I think I'll help out God. Anytime you help out God, you're going to be in trouble. Anytime we're trying to help out God, things aren't going to go exactly as planned. We usually have a way of messing that up, and he did. Do you know how he messed up his life? Listen, he was able to receive the birthright and the blessing, but he broke relationship with his brother. He broke relationship with his brother and he deceived his dad. Broke relationship with his brother and deceived his dad and threw his family in turmoil. Did not only throw his family in turmoil, but he threw his whole nation that is going to come from his loins, throws it in turmoil. You know why? Because whenever he steals that blessing, or at least it looks like to Esau he steals the blessing, deceives his dad later, Esau becomes so angry, he hates Jacob. He hates Jacob, and he promises this: when my dad dies, I'm going to kill my brother. That's how much I hate him. Now, if you know the story, there's a change of Esau's heart down the way. Whenever they come back together, they actually have peace. But listen to me. That hatred that went in the heart of Esau passed on through his lineage to his children, grandchildren, and their children. To the point that the Israelites, one of their worst enemies and one of the ones who constantly tried to cause them to have difficult times, were the Edomites. The Edomites. And who are those? The children and the grandchildren of Esau who hate their brothers, the lineage of Jacob. And why did that take place? Because Jacob couldn't wait on God to do it God's way. He had to help God out. That was his problem. Now, what does that story tell us about human beings and people? Well, first of all, there are a whole lot of Esau's in life. There are people walking around all over the place. They're probably not here today, but you'll see them tomorrow, and you'll encounter them all along life's way. They are Esau's. And what do I mean that they're Esau's? Well, they're people who, they just don't see the value in spiritual things. They don't understand the value of a birthright or a blessing. They don't understand the value of eternal things, that out there's a heaven and a spiritual world, and when this life is over, that what's really going to matter is where you spend eternity. There are people everywhere who have no concern for spiritual things. You know what? They're Esau's. Do you know what they're concerned about? They're concerned about soup in the bowl. They're concerned about making sure the physical needs are met. They're concerned about living today. They're reckless, unprepared. They make compulsive decisions. There's a lot of exaggeration. A lot of things go into this world. Just living my life and living in this world and getting all I can out of this world. But those Esau's, listen, those Esau's, just like that Esau, there's going to be a time when they're going to want the blessing. And you know what the blessing is, the eternal blessing that God gives to us? It's a place called heaven. It's an eternity with a holy God. It's a place where there is no pain, there is no suffering anymore, there is no death. It's a place of great glory and reward, especially made for those who know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And one day, listen, one day, they're going to walk the blessing. There are a few people that you'd meet in life say, would you like to go to heaven? Yeah, I'd like to go to heaven. I don't even know if it's real, but I'd like to go there. Many people want the blessing, but they forsake the birthright. Because see, the birthright we have is not in us. The birthright we have is through Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He gives to us the privilege and opportunity of being a child of God because He is the Son of God, paid the price for our sin, and adopted us into His family, and we have the birthright. And those who have the birthright receive the blessing. But if you in your life live like Esau, and you despise the birthright, that privilege, for a bowl of soup or whatever it might be, if you despise that birthright, you will never receive the blessing. Even though, like Esau, one day you will repent, and one day you will weep, and one day you will cry, wanting that blessing. The opportunity of repentance, the opportunity for grace, the opportunity for the blessing is gone. Because if you miss out on the birthright, you lose the blessing. And you will see Esau's all around this world who live for today but never think about the value of spiritual things. And somebody needs to wake up some Esau's. Somebody needs to help them to understand that there's something far more important than a bowl of stew or the things of this world. It's the blessings of eternity. And you got to get the birthright if you're going to get the blessing. But in this world also, there are Jacobs. And at this point in time in Jacob's life, he's not a righteous man, he's a rascal. And these people are like Jacob. Here's the truth about Jacob. They realize their spiritual things. They realize their spiritual realities. They really believe that there's a heaven. They really believe that some of the promises of God are true. They believe that that hope is out there. But here's the problem. Even though they believe it, they try to attain it themselves, their way. They think they can get there. They think they can maneuver things around and earn it and deserve it. They think they can find a way in the side door. They think somehow, some way in their lives that they can actually get that birthright and blessing in themselves rather than it being a hand from God. And in Jacob's life, it's exactly that picture. And Jacob at that point is not a righteous man. He is not a righteous man, he's a rascal. Now, there's a third group of people that need to be, and that needs to be Jacob in his later life. You know what Jacob finds out in his later life? This is what he finds out. I mean, he goes through a big roller coaster of experiences in life. But this is what he finally discovers. That the only thing that really matters, the only thing that really matters in life and in death is having a relationship with God. That's what he finally discovers. He's going to go through all kinds of experiences. But one day, he's going to find out. One day, he's going to discover that all that really matters is not the wealth of this world. It's not who you are. It's not how many children you have. It's not, all that really matters is that you have a relationship with a living God. And in that relationship with a living God, He will bless you beyond all you could ever imagine, calculate, or work for. Now that later Jacob, that righteous man, is who we need to be. That's the goal of life, is that we understand that all the things, that wonderful as they may be, all the promises, all the blessings, When it really comes down to it, all that matters is having a relationship with a living God who will bless you. And one day you will know that. One day you will know that. When you stand before the judgment seat of God, when time is no more, whenever it's just you, your life, and God, you'll find out the only thing that matters is that relationship with Him. And how do you have that relationship with Him? Well, after the cross, you have that relationship through His Son. His Son is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by Him. There's one thing for us to know in the story of Esau and Jacob, is that many people are going to miss it. Some don't even think about it, and they're going to miss it. Some know about it, but they're trying to attain it the wrong way, and they're going to miss out. The only way is to attain it God's way, and that's to put your faith and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. By that, have the right of birth, to be birthed into the kingdom and a recipient of the blessing through that relationship with God. Do you have that relationship with God? If you don't, you need it, because that's all that's going to matter one day. That's all that's going to matter one day. I think about Esau called Edom. How many times when he heard those words, Edom, 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 he thought about what I forsook, what I lost for a bowl of red stuff. I hope in your heart and in your life, you don't go through all eternity naming something that you lost the right for the blessing because you held on to that.